Dear students and my teacher friends, Namaskar. I welcome you to the presentation lecture on the facial bone. Now, we all know that there are 14 facial bones, and we even know the names of the facial bones. But the point is how the examiner is going to frame the question, how the examiner is going to frame the multiple choice question for you. So as you can see in this on the screen, I'm showing you one facial bone, and with the red color I have covered the name of the facial bone. Now you need to identify, let's say this is the, I'm writing over here for this blue bone, I'm writing A. And in exam, the examiner is going to ask you what is the name of this facial bone. So in this lecture, what I am going to do is I will show you uh, some of the images of these 14 bones, and you need to carefully observe all these images. So basically we are going to look at all these 14 bones from the different angles. Okay, so if you are able to identify this bone correctly and if you are knowing the name, then rather I would say you don't require to attend this presentation lecture, because this lecture is very simple lecture, and the position you are required to identify the position of the bone. Okay, so now I'm showing you the name of the bone. So as you can see, the name of this bone is the vomer bone. Okay, so vomer bone, this one is the vomer bone. In your syllabus this thing is there only. Okay, name of the bone, position of the bone. Okay, now we are starting this lecture. So in our face, as you know, there are 14 bones. Okay, and the name of these bones, so two maxilla bones are there. For example, this light color bone and this light color bone, so these are two maxilla bone. Then two zygomatic bones are there, so this bone and this bone, they are also known as the cheek bones, zygomatic bones. Then the mandible, okay, largest and strongest bone of our face. Okay, that is the mandible. This one is the mandible bone. Then the vomer, okay, one vomer bone. Then two inferior nasal conchae. So for example, this one, inferior nasal conchae. Then two nasal bone, so this one and this one, these two are the nasal bone. And lacrimal bone, just two lacrimal bone. So I will zoom, I'm zooming so that you can see. So over here, this one is the lacrimal, and this one is the lacrimal bone. Then okay, the bones of our hard palate, for example this bone, okay, and this bone, this two, so these are two palatine bones. Now if you want to go through this information, you can go through this information. Okay, all this information you go through once. Now what are the functions of this facial bones? Now the function, as you can see over here, it is written, they are supporting, these bones are supporting our teeth. Then they are providing the attachment point for the muscles. Now which muscles? So the muscles which are involved in the chewing. Okay, so these chewing muscles, they get surface for attachment with the help of this facial bone. Okay, then our facial expression, the muscles which are responsible for our facial expression, they are attached to this facial bones. For example, the face expression when we are happy, when we are sad, we are crying, we are laughing. Okay, so all these are our facial expression, and for this facial expression the muscles are attached with the facial bones. Okay, then the muscles which are some muscles, they are attached to our nasal bones. Okay, and there are muscles which are attached to the orbital cavity. So for example, so this one is the orbital cavity, and we know in orbital cavity or the eye socket, in that the eyes are present. Okay, so muscles which are associated with our eyes, they are also attached with this facial bones. So these are the functions of the facial bones. Now one by one you need to go through these figures. For example, in this figure, two nasal bones. Okay, so as you can see, these are the nasal bone. Now carefully observe the exact position of the bone. Okay, then zygomatic bone. Okay, this purple color bone, zygomatic or the cheekbone. Then lacrimal bone. Okay, here as you can see, this one is the lacrimal bone. So two this side, in this figure they are not showing, but here there is one lacrimal bone. So this side, if we are, for example, we are viewing this skull from the left hand side, then right hand side lacrimal bone is not visible in this figure. So nasal bone, zygomatic, lacrimal. Okay, now you go through this information. Okay, then palatine bone. How many palatine bone? Two L shape palatine bones are there. For example, this one, this is L shape, and this one is the L shape, right and left. Okay, so I am zooming this. Okay, so that you can see properly. Now carefully observe position of the bone, palatine bone, where it is present. Okay, now mandible. Okay, now the mandible bone. So this one is the mandible, and this information for mandible, you remember, mandible is the inferior jaw bone and the only movable bone of the adult skull. Okay, only movable bone of the adult skull, that is the mandible bone. And another important point, that you remember the name of this joint. 1 minute. So this joint is temporomandibular joint. Okay, now I'm showing you this temporomandibular joint. Now what is this temporomandibular joint? Now as you can see, this one is the mandible bone, and you can see this is the end part of the mandibular bone. So this end part is known as the mandibular condyle. Okay, and over here, this is the temporal bone, and so this we can say, this is the part of the temporal bone, and this part is known as the mandibular fossa of the temporal bone. So this is the mandibular fossa of the temporal bone. So here it is written, as you can see, you can read this: mandibular condyle fits into the mandibular fossa. For example, this, okay, this one is fitting into this mandibular fossa, and together both of them, okay, they are making the movable joint. So this joint, okay, this blue color circle, for example, this blue color circle, this joint, which is freely movable joint, this joint is known as the temporomandibular joint. Okay, so the name is important where this joint is present. Now we are moving forward. Now maxilla bone. Okay, maxilla bone, also known as the maxillary bone. There are two maxilla bone. Okay, so this way we are looking, and that side you can understand. Okay, from this is the lateral side of the skull they are showing, so that's why we are only managing to observe the one maxilla bone. So here this is the maxilla bone they are showing. Okay, so maxilla bone, you, if you want, you can go through this information, you can read this information if you are interested. Then okay, then the inferior nasal conchae, okay, where they are present, so located in the lateral walls of the nasal cavity. Okay, so this is the inferior nasal conchae. Okay, this one and this one. Okay, inferior nasal conchae. Excuse me. Then now you know this bone very well. Okay, because in the beginning I have shown you this is the vomer bone. Okay, and vomer bone is the deepest facial bone. Okay, now I'm showing you the different images now, and you carefully observe all the names, because as I have told you earlier, in the exam they will show you the skull and they will definitely going to ask you the name. So all the name you carefully you go through. Some are skull bone, that is the cranium bone, and some are the face bone. Okay, this, then this way, all this information. Okay, you can go through this information, you can read this information. Okay, then this information you can read. Observe all the names. Okay, go through all the names, try to remember as many as possible. Mainly the highlighted one are important in this figure. Okay, highlighted bone. Okay, over here in this figure also. Okay, then we are talking, now we are going to talk about the hyoid bone. Okay, so hyoid bone. So the first point, what is hyoid bone? The shape of the hyoid bone, it is the U-shaped bone. Okay, now where it is present, so it sits, it is located between the chin and the larynx. Okay, and this is the important line for the hyoid bone. Hyoid bone, the only bone that doesn't articulate with any other bone. Okay, this bone is not in contact with any other bone of the skull, it is not attached with any other skull bone. That is the meaning of this. So this point is important. Okay, now what is the role of this hyoid bone? Okay, what are the function of the hyoid bone? So the hyoid bone serves as an attachment point for the muscles, okay, that are controlling the tongue movement, muscles which are controlling the movement or they're responsible for the movement of the mandible, then the pharynx, okay, larynx, okay. So all this larynx muscle, mandible, tongue muscles, okay. So this hyoid bone is basically is serving as the attachment point for all this organ muscles. So here in the figure, now I am showing you, this is the hyoid bone, okay, and where it is present. So between the chin and the larynx, as you can see, this is the larynx. Over here they are showing the larynx, okay. So between the larynx and the this one is the chin, so this hyoid bone is present. Now, and this topic, I don't think they have included this topic in your syllabus, but if you are interested, you can go through this, and these are the sinuses, okay. So you can read the information regarding the sinuses and where there is where they are located, these sinuses are. So now with this, I have completed the presentation lecture on the facial bones. I hope this presentation lecture is helpful in your preparation, in your studies. My name is Manish Kosti sir. I am from Ahmedabad, India. Bye bye. Namaste.